In this video, I'm taking a plain Microsoft SharePoint site template and transforming it into a fully branded high-impact Red Bull racing intranet site. And I'm going to show you the 5 simple design tips that make it possible. You don't need Figma or any special design software. You don't need a design degree. Anything visual I need to create for this project, I'm going to do it in PowerPoint. So this is totally accessible to anybody, including you. By the time we're done, your sites are going to start looking so cool. People are going to think a design agency did it, and your colleagues will be blown away when they find out it was just you. So for over 10 years now, I've worked with many design agencies to turn SharePoint sites from functional to beautiful. And today I'm going to show you everything I've learned wrapped up into 5 simple to follow tips so you can do the same. Whether you're brand new to SharePoint or you've worked with it for years, the default design or in general the look and feel can be a little bit, well, underwhelming. But the good news is with just a couple of tweaks, you can turn your site from bland into something that looks super polished, professional, and on brand. So like all my videos, it's going to be a build along example so I can show you how I'm going to put these tips into practice. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this SharePoint site template and transform it into this. And yes, you can 100% achieve the same results yourself. So let's break it down step by step. This video is sponsored by me and Academy 365, which is a site where I have a number of courses that will take you from zero to absolute SharePoint hero. These courses are structured to guide you step by step on how to deliver the most common intranet requirements I see day in and day out. Whether you're building a new intranet site or indeed need to uplift and revitalize an existing site, these courses are for you. And the best thing is you don't have to be a techie to take them, right? These courses have been carefully designed so they're accessible to anybody with any level of experience within SharePoint. We have the SharePoint Site Builder Masterclass version 2, which is an updated version of my original flagship course. This course guides you on how to create a typical intranet department site step by step, jam-packed with the most common requirements I see from real-world experience. We also have the SharePoint Training and Education Platform Site course, which will show you how to create amazing educational experiences within SharePoint. Both courses are laser focused on end-user experience, so you'll be able to wow your users, your colleagues, and even your bosses. If you're interested, there's a link below along with a tasty discount. Now back to the video. So tip number 1 is all about color and how it commands attention. Now we're starting with color because, to be honest, it's really the fastest way to make your site feel branded, aligning to your organization's branding. Now the vast majority of intranets kind of suffer from being a little bit one-dimensional and plain, but don't worry, we're going to fix that. So step 1, or the first thing I do, is decide on the branding colors you want to use for your intranet sites. Now I find a really handy way to do this and keep them front and center is to get them laid out, and you can use something like PowerPoint for this. So if we look over here at PowerPoint, I've got a new presentation and I've just added in a couple of brand colors in here. Now, as I mentioned, we're going to brand this template as Red Bull Racing. So I've chosen a very vibrant red, a very deep blue, and then a splash of yellow. And if we look at Red Bull's site, and in particular their car, we can kind of see that kind of fits, right? We've got our reds, we've got our yellows, and we've got our blues. Now all these it's just PowerPoint, right? So this is just a rectangle. I drew a rectangle, I got the branding color. So if you have your company's brand guidelines, they'll have colors like this available for you with the hex code, because we're going to use that a lot. So once you have your hex code, draw a rectangle, right click on it and go to Format Shape. And when you do that, select Solid Fill, and in here, if you go to More Colors, change it to the slider option, you can pop in that hex code there. So then you'll get your square, which is the right color. So just repeat that for your colors. Now I typically go for 2 primary colors and 1 secondary. So that's what I've done in here. You do want variation, but you don't want to go overboard with it, okay? So something like this works well. So now we have the colors that we want to use throughout our site. We can go into SharePoint and we can create our SharePoint theme and the variations within. Now, just recently, it only landed in my tenant this week. We've got more options to expand the branding and have a variation in colors throughout our site. So I'm going to demonstrate that to you now. So here we are in SharePoint and I'm using the Brand Central template. That's what we're going to transform into Red Bull Racing's brand template site. So what we want to do first is we want to create that color theme. So what I'll do is I'll come up to the cog and I'm going to come down to site branding. I'll click on that and we come in here and we've no theme set up yet because this is a fresh site. So what I'm going to say is new theme. And this is where it's changed from before. Before we were just able to really pop in 4 colors, but now we can add multiple colors and create theme variations with them. So I'm going to add a color. I'm going to select new color. I'll come back to PowerPoint and I'm going to grab my hex code for red. I have that. I'll come back in here, pop it in and say add. So now we've got a red color ready to go in a theme. So we can add multiple colors. So now I'm going to add in the navy color so it's available to us. So back into PowerPoint, I'm going to grab my navy hex code, add a color, new color, and just pop that in there. So now we have a navy variation. So you can see over here in the example, we're creating color combinations, and we can use all of these combinations on the same site and in the same page. So we're going to add in another color, and this is going to be our yellow color. So we'll say add color, new color, grab my hex code and just paste it in like that and add. And now we've got the 3 colors, or at least the 3 colors that I want to use to build out this site. So I'm going to say next, we'll give it a name. Red Bull Racing is good for me. So I'll say save. And now we have this theme ready to go. So now I'll come back to the home page of the site, back up to the cog. And now I'm going to go to the change the look settings. So I'll click that. I'm going to go to theme and I'm going to select my Red Bull Racing color. And just like that, we've already introduced a bit of branding, but we've way more to do. So I'll say save. So this is great. We have that in here. And now if we edit a section, so I'll choose this fella here and I'll go to the properties. We now have 2 tabs in here. One is for the layout, so the section layout, and the other one is dedicated to design. So if I click design, I can see here that I have my different color combinations that were created. So I can choose my yellow one, or I can choose white, and that will have yellow buttons, similar with the navy, okay? All this can be done on the one page. It's super flexible now, way better than it was before. However, we can go a little bit further and we can add a little bit of depth into these sections. So what I like to do is I'm going to come back into PowerPoint, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to create some section background gradients. So I'm going to select my 3 colors using Shift. I'll click, hold Alt, drag across, and it's just going to bring them over here. And now what I want to do is I want to create swatches that I can upload to my site, and I can use them as backgrounds, and we can create nice subtle gradients based off of these colors, like I said, that are going to add depth to your site. So if I select this one here, for example, and I look over in the format shape settings, we're on solid fill, but I'm going to change that to gradient fill. Now we get this blue in here. It's not what we want. So what we'll do is we'll copy the hex code here, select our shape again, and we select these sliders, right? These say basically we're going from this color to this color, and just going to grade it across. So selecting one of them, I'll come over here to the paint bucket, go to more colors, bring it over to my sliders, and I'll just paste in my red color. And I'll come over to the other slider, select the paint bucket again, more colors, and I'll paste in the exact same hex code. So now this is just flat again, right? So we can add variation to one of these sides. So I'll come into my paint bucket again, more colors. I'll come over to the color wheel, and you can ever so slightly move this cursor just up a bit so it gives you a variation, and you can go whatever way you want, but I'd stay fairly close to the color we were on. So if I change this to more of a pinky color here and I say okay, we've got a very subtle gradient coming across this, and that's exactly what I'm looking for. I'll do the same to the navy, and finally I'll do the exact same for my yellow. So now we have these gradients in here. So at this point, right, I need to get these from PowerPoint and into SharePoint so I can use them as section backgrounds. Very handy way to do that. Select any of these shapes, right click and say save as picture. So I'll just name this one red gradient and save, and then I'll do the exact same, saving out the other ones. So now that I have all them saved, I'm going to bring them into SharePoint so I can use them again and again. So back in my site, I'm going to go to the cog, go to site contents, I'm going to go to site assets. You can save these anywhere. I just tend to put them in here. I'm going to say new folder, and I'll say section backgrounds. Create that, pop in here, and then I just upload my saved gradient images into here for use throughout the site. So now I've uploaded them in here. Now they're ready for use. Now, why did I go through all that effort? Well, let's demonstrate. So back to our home page. So say in this section here, if we wanted to have one of our fancier gradients, I'll edit the page, select the section, go to its properties. I'll come into design, and I'm going to say add a background. And I'm going to go to site, site assets, and here's our section backgrounds folder. And now I have all of these lovely gradients to choose from. So I might choose this red gradient, I'll say select, and it comes in here and we can see the gradient moving across. We'll reduce the opacity so we can see it in all its glory, and it's in here ready to go. So this is really handy, right? So we've saved them in a central location. So any page we create, we can use these section backgrounds nicely. So color is going to feature in a lot of the other tips combined with what that actual tip is. But for now, decide on your brand colors, keep it simple, create your template, create your site theme with the variations, and then create your gradient color swatches. Like I said, they're going to add depth to your sections. So let's just fix a couple of things. Let's come up into the page header. So we'll say change the look. We'll go to header, and I'm going to choose an extended header here. I'm going to change the background color. Now I have these variations. I'm going to choose the navy one. I'm going to pop down here and I'm going to upload a site logo. So I'll click change and I'm going to choose this Red Bull logo. So I'm going to add that in. So I'll say open and now we have it in here. It's looking smart. So I'll click save. So even with subtle changes, it feels a little bit more Red Bullish. So tip number 2 is all about page structure and flow. So now that we have the color foundation set, we turn our attention to the flow. And this is where structure really makes a difference to the sites. So if we start at the top of our page and really this header section, when it comes to the landing page of the site or a really big topic page within the site, I just don't really like the out of the box SharePoint kind of banner web part layout options. They don't really do it for me. So if we come over to the demo site, you can see I tend to create my own custom kind of header section, which really stands out and is bold and grabs attention. So a format I typically stick to is I'll use really big, bold, vibrant text to grab attention, to let people know what the kind of title of the site or what its main goal is. I then like to include a bit of a description somewhere below it, which is going to let people know what they can expect to find on the site, and it's a nice introduction. If I can, I like to balance it out on the right hand side with a nice visual. A bit of eye candy never hurt anybody, and to top it off, a really nice branded section background image, which I'll show you how I create it in PowerPoint so it blends in nicely. Now you could of course just upload a background photo in here and apply the default dark gradient on top of it, but a kind of a black gradient on top of this image just wouldn't work well color wise with our site. So we create a custom one. It's very easy and it ties in really nicely. So let's go ahead and build out this header section so you can see exactly how I did it. So what I'll do is I'll come back into PowerPoint and I'll create a new slide. Get rid of all this messing in here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop in the image that I have here for a Formula 1 car on the track. So we bring that in here, something like this. We don't need the designer, get away from me. And what I'll do is I'll come back up to where I had my color swatches and I'm just going to select this navy one and I'm going to copy it. And I'll come back to my car image and I'm just going to paste it in on top and I'm going to resize it so it covers the image. If you don't have the shape format options over here, again, just right click and choose format shape. And then over on the right hand side, we have an option for transparency. So we can just increase that so that the image starts to peek through behind it. Something like that looks good. When you've got that in place, drag over everything, right click and say group. And now we can export this whole group as an actual image to use on our site. So again, you're just going to right click, save as picture, save it down, and then it's ready to go. So back over to our site here, I'm going to edit the page. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to delete out all of this stuff in here. So we basically have nothing, so we're starting from scratch. So I'm going to add in a new section. I'm going to choose a flexible section. I'll just drop this down here a little bit, and I'm going to come over to the properties. I'm going to go to design, and I'm going to say add a background. I'll go to upload, and then I'll just upload the image that I just saved. So there's the image that we created. So I'll just say add image, and that comes in something like that, looking great. And then we just really need to add the content to this section. So I'll come over to my toolbox here. I'm going to add in a text web part. And I like to put in a bit of a breadcrumb. So I'll say home. Home might be the root of your intranet. And then we might title this site something like our brand. Whatever the title is, I'll just stick it in. And then for your link here, you can just choose the text that you want to link to. Choose the link option and pop in whatever it is you want to link to. Sometimes I'll end up actually making this a little bit smaller just so it doesn't get in the way of anything. So we have a little simple breadcrumb in there, nothing fancy happening there. So now we want to put in that big title. So again, I'm going to add in another text web part and we're just going to type in guidance for representing our brand. When I have that in there, I'll select the text and I'll make it a H2. And this is where we can go crazy. I might set it to something like 100 and then I'll just drag this out to the side. Something like that looks good. Might select it all again and make it bold to really stand out. And then again, I'll grab one more text web part in below, and that's where I'm going to pop in the description. So something like that is good. And then I'll just bring it out here to the right hand side. And then we can pop the image in here over on the right hand side. So I'll choose the image web part. I'm going to go to upload and I have this F1 car picture like this. So I'm just going to pop that in. We have it in there. We can just bring it up into position and size it as we need to. That looks pretty good like that. And then we don't need all this space down here. So I'll just bring this back up. Something like that looks pretty good. So I'll get rid of that sidebar and I'll republish. So like that, we have a much more engaging page header, which really sets the foundation for our structure and the flow that will continue down the page. So from the header section, we move down into body, and this is really where spacing is key. A well-structured layout with intentional space between sections, it doesn't just improve readability, it also gives you a lot more opportunities to introduce branding to your pages. With each new section, just a rich opportunity to add in new section backgrounds, typography, all that good stuff to really sell the look and feel of your site. So if we continue down the page and we look the way the template was laid out by Microsoft, everything is fairly flat, I would say, and quite close together. So we have this section here, which I suppose is not too bad, but there's definitely things that we're going to change with it that we'll get to. Down here, we have branding, identity, and templates. Now, I think these could be their own sections in their own right, with room to add in a bit of context and again, drive forward the branding. We have other resources in here, which is a section, and we have another section in here. So kind of done it a bit, but I think we could just increase the spacing, which would give us, more space to really add in a little bit more flair and flourish. And you might be thinking, well, if you add in all of this extra space, will the page not get very long? And the short answer is, well, yes, it will get longer. But to be honest, I don't really think personally that that's a bad thing. I'm a firm believer that a longer but well-structured page is way better than a page where you're trying to cram everything in above the fold, because it's just harder for someone to see what's there and really tell one section apart from another section or categories of information. But if you're still concerned, I do have an answer for it, and we'll get to that in a moment. I'll show you how I can help with that. But first, let's just separate things out a little bit more. So I'm going to edit the page here, and I'm getting very fond of these flexible sections. So we'll change this into a flexible section. So we'll come in here, say add flexible section. I'm not actually going to use this image, so I'll get rid of it. I'll get rid of this image also, and this image also. So I'm going to grab my text here and I'm going to pull it up, and I'll do the same for the button, and just the same with the other ones, just to get them up there. So we have them up here. Let's get rid of this section. We don't need it anymore. I'll just drag this down for a second. So I'll select this and I'll select this, and I'll just quickly group it. It's easier to move around as one. Just bring it down a bit, and I'll do the same with the other two. So that's a nicely laid out section there. We'll come back to the other elements as we get through the rest of the tips. We'll come down to brand identity. We'll do the same thing. We're just going to add in another flexible section, and we'll pull this quick links web part up into it. Bit of space below, and we'll do the exact same with templates. Again, flexible section, pull this up into it, delete this section down here. And now that everything is its own section, we can add in backgrounds so we can really separate things out and bring in that branding. So for branding identity, I'm going to come in here. I'm going to go to properties. I'll go to design, and I want to use one of my gradient swatches. So I'm going to go to site assets, section backgrounds. And again, I'll choose that yellow gradient, pop it in there like that. And below that in here, we're going to go for the navy gradient. So we'll say design, again, add a background, site assets, section backgrounds, and we'll choose our blue gradient. For our resources section, I'm going to go to design, and I'm just going to make that a white background. And I'll actually take this into a flexible section as well. Why not? Up here like this. And I think we can bring in the new product up there as well. Drag this down, bring our new product up. I can delete this. I can delete this. And then we have this kind of footer area down here. So what I'll do is I'll select that. I'll go to design, add a background, site assets, section background, and we'll choose the navy swatch. And what we can actually do here, because it's kind of towards the bottom of the page, we can actually increase the dark overlay. So we can bring that right up, so it really finishes off the page nicely. So we've got our sections clearly laid out on our page. So we have a nice structure and flow. Like I said, the rest of the tips are really going to bring it home for us. But let's address the elephant in the room for people who are afraid of the scrolling and people just might miss what's on the page. So there's a very handy feature on SharePoint called anchor links. And it's basically, if we have a heading in a section, we can link directly to it from a button. So for example, in branding identity, okay, so and this is the quick links web part, what I can do is I'll select this section, go to the toolbox, add in some text, and we might just title this area our brand identity. And if I just come in here and make that a H2, for example, we'll make it look prettier now in a minute. Basically making that a H2 will give me a link. So if I republish this page and I come down here, I'll see if I hover over the text, I see a little link in here. If I click that and I look up in the URL bar, I'll see that after the URL of the site, I'll have a hash, and then it will say the words our brand identity. If I copy that link and I come back up here, put the page into edit mode, we can add in another flexible section just here, and we pop in a button web part. I come to its properties, paste in that same link where we have the hash and then our brand identity after it, That means that if someone clicks that, the page won't reload. It'll just instantly scroll down to that section, which is really nice. So I'll give it a label, our brand identity. And we can just move that out so we can actually read the text. And I'll bring that over to the side, and I might just add in a little text to help people understand what this means. And we can say jump to ... I might make this a H2 as well, bold, just so it stands out, and pop that over here. And basically we're saying to people, jump to our brand identity. We do the same with that with all of our different sections, and that lets us quickly navigate. So if I just show you over here on the demo site, if I scroll up, it's exactly what I've done here. Jump to, and I got guidance, which links to guidance, our brand identity, which links to our brand identity, templates and training, exact same thing, just anchor linking to the sections below. So if I was to click on templates, for example, it takes me right down to templates. So this for me serves two purposes. It lets people quickly get to a different section of the page if it's long, but it also gives people an overview of what's on the page, which I think is really nice. So back over here, I'll just add in the anchor links exact same way, and we'll have this part almost there ready to go. So that is all of those links in there. Again, I just added in a header, just the page, add the link by clicking on the little link symbol, copied it, and then put a button up here with that link in it, which will jump to that section of the page. So nearly there. For this section, just to tie it off nicely, I want to change the background because white on white, I just want contrasting sections. So select this section, go to its properties, go to design. Again, we're going to use our gradient swatches. They're so handy. So we'll go to site assets, section backgrounds. We'll choose this again. This is a good point in here, right? So you see when I chose a dark background, SharePoint is trying to help us and it's trying to add contrast. So it changes the buttons to white. If you want to overcome this, what you can do is we could set the overlay to white, then just reduce that all the way. Then our buttons will remain that right color. Our text will go back to black. So what we'd want to do is come in here, select the text. In our apply a font color, we can choose white. If you don't see white anywhere here, just go to more colors, bring this all the way to white and say okay. And now that's white and readable, which is great. We have that in there, so we'll say republish. Now we have this nice on-page navigation, which tells people what's on the page, but also gives them a quick way to get there. So like I said, if you're worried about your page being a bit too long, this is a nice way around it. I've used this in lots of different places and different scenarios, and it works really, really well. So just like that, adding in clear sections and then having our brand work for us to call them out differently really kind of adds a lot to the page. When we combine that with our next set of tips, it's going to be flawless. So tip number 3 is all about fonts and typography. So now that the page layout is starting to take shape, let's talk about the typography we use on the site, because how your font and your type looks can be as important as what it says. So out of the box, the SharePoint font styles can be a little bit samey. Do you know what I mean? There's not a whole lot of variation there, and it's typically in size is what we're talking about. They don't really give you a visual hierarchy to the text you use on the page. So in this tip, I'm going to try and show you how I try and break out of that default style and make it a little bit my own. So the first thing I'd say really is to kind of go big with your headings, okay? Especially these section headings. So we've gone through the trouble of adding in these sections. So let's let them really stand out. As it is the default H2 and then this heading in here, there's not a whole lot of difference between them. They could almost be confused as being the same. So if we put the page into edit mode and we focus on this area first, let's kind of jazz it up a little bit. So if we come in here, I'm going to make this really big to help create these natural breaks and really call out the sections from one another and the content within. So I'm going to select this in here. I'm going to select this box in here and I'm going to bring it right up to 68, which is nice and big. Okay. And that means, of course, I need to bring these guys down. So I'll select this fella and I'll just drop it down so we have a little bit of space. Same with this guy here. And then also this guy here. So even at that, we can see very clearly that this is the guidance section of the page, okay? It stands out nicely. And then again, we will do it down here to our brand identity. Now you'll see here that we have our brand identity here and branding identity here. We don't need the title in both places. So for the quick links web part, we can always go to edit properties and we can not show the title. And then that lets us bring it down and we don't have contrasting titles. So again, I'll select this, select all the text and bring it right up to 68. We need to make more space, so I'll drag that down, bring the web part down, and I'll just bring this down. As a rule of kind of thumb for me, I usually pick 2 squares as a spacing between the top of my section, just to give it that space that we've talked about before. Then we come to templates. I'll do the exact same thing, hide the title here and bring it right down. And then templates, increase that to 68. Again, we'll do the same down here, and we'll talk about web part variation in a minute. So again, up to 68. Excellent. So at that, we can kind of see, if we were just scanning down the page, we'd really clearly see, well, this is guidance, this is brand identity, this is templates. There's no confusion. We're not confusing a section heading with some content headings within. So even here in our headings in here, this is set at a H4 of 20. I might just increase that again because it just makes it easier to scan and read. So even something like 28 just makes it stand out that little bit more. So another little trick I tend to try and do, again, to bring into branding, is the font color. Okay, so we have in here guidance. So if I select the text, I come up here and I go to the font colors. Well, we've got our theme in place, so we can use the colors that come with it. So I might use this dark navy, which is our brand color, to add it in. Again, it's going to tie it in nicely. Like I said, I know it's a bit of work, but you'll get used to it, and then you can have this lovely branded site. So again, I'll come in here and I'll change this to our navy. Again, I'll just select this text in here, navy, and I'll basically do this with all the text as I'm building out the page. So it's not like you have to have all the text and then do it. It'll become second nature to you. And then if you really want to get fancy, what you can do, and it's a trick that I like to do quite often, is I'll add a full stop after a section heading. And I'm kind of going with a white background, some red kind of call to actions in here, and this navy font. So it's all on brand, but what I might do is I just might take that full stop, come in here and change its color to match our calls to action. So I choose the red, and now it's such a subtle thing, but I think it really adds to the page. So we can come down in here, and again, I would be changing this font color to my navy color, just like so. And I think in this scenario, I think red and yellow looks nice. So I'll put in my full stop, and I'm going to pop in the red color, something like that. And you just continue it down through the section. So again, we have our navy color down here. So I'll put in a full stop, and I'll change that to red also. And you know, when I look back here, there's an awful lot of red full stops going on. So I'm actually going to change the colors that are used in this section to use the yellow. So I'm going to choose my yellow color here. And then what I can do is I can click anywhere in the section, go to its properties, go to design, and say, you know what, I want yellow buttons. And now we have it like that. It's after changing my colors all over the place. So now I'm just going to change them back. So go up to our font color and then just apply the navy again. I won't make you watch me do it. Right, so everything's right with the world again. So now we've got this lovely yellow section, which contrasts nicely with the red up here. And then we come down here and everything is looking absolutely beautiful. We're really getting there. And now what I will say is, if you have a custom font available, so the brand center in your admin center is set up and you have the font, I'd say use it because it makes a world of difference. So if I republish this page, now I've set up some branding fonts on my tenant. So I'm going to choose one of them. I'll come up to the cog. I'll come in to change the look. Now, if you see fonts in here, it means your brand center was activated. So you'll have fonts to choose from. So I'm going to choose this Sierra Pro font, which I tend to like the look of. And I'll click save. And I think just the difference it makes is mega. Having this font that's not that typical SharePoint font, it really gets the page going. So again, all these little changes are building on top of each other, and they're not hard changes. I know it takes me a while to explain them, but you can implement these extremely quick. And then kind of lastly on fonts, I'd say if you're looking for some simple icons and you don't want to go with the icon library in SharePoint, I think you can't go wrong with some emojis. Now, if it fits the culture and the look and feel, I think they're fantastic because they're technically text. They resize beautifully. They're always very crisp and sharp. I think they just look well. So I'm going to pop some in here. So back into edit mode. And what I'll do is up here in this text box, I'll hit return. I'll get the emoji picker out and I'm going to pick a camera, let's say, which would be this guy here. And then you can always increase the font here. So you could go to something like 68 and it comes in like this. Now, of course, you're going to play with your sizing and layout and stuff like that to make it fit, but that's all good. So find images, and then we have a camera and explore images. Again, with design with flair, return emoji picker. So on a Mac, to get that up really quick, it's Control, Command, and Spacebar. On a Windows machine, it's the Windows key and the period key, I think. So our flair, I'll just use this collision because why not? Again, I'll bring that up to 68, so it's nice and big. But again, look, it's really sharp, it's really crisp, so I like it. And then we'll bring our button down just to have it down there nicely and present powerfully. Again, bring it down. An emoji for this is going to be this mechanical arm because I'm assuming that's pretty powerful. Pop it in like that and bring this down. And now we added 2 squares at the top for the space, and so I'll add about 2 here and it'll keep it nice and even. So even making those changes and republishing, we've got something that looks really nice here. I'd be pretty happy with that if I arrived on this site. So to summarize tip number 3, the typography and how you use font on the site with the sizes, the little flourishes, using emojis and things like that. This all comes together to make a massive difference to your site. So really explore typography, look at the hierarchy, make sure if something is a section heading, it's really big, you can see it at a glance. And don't be afraid to increase the sizes of these headings, again, so people can easily read it and scan it. And when you put this together, you can see why adding in that structure and the space in between the sections, it doesn't matter because people can see it nice and clearly. So like I said, a longer page that's well structured and clear is much better than a tight page where everything is cramped together and you really have to search for what you're looking for. So moving swiftly on to tip number 4, and this is all about the imagery you use on your site, because the choice and style of imagery is really what's going to take your site to the next level and look polished and impressive as hell. So if we come over here to our demo site and we just have a look at the different images that are used. So we talked about the header section, and this is really driving the branding as much as we can, but we can add subtle imagery around the place. So in here, we've good old happy looking Max Verstappen here, keeping an eye on us for our guidance. That's a nice subtle image we can pop on the page. We don't have to do it, but it's nice to do it because it makes the page look really cool, in my opinion. We come down the page, well, we've used some emojis here because they look nice in this section. The yellow hands, usually find a hand symbol for most things, fit in nice with the color that we have here. That's why I chose them. Coming down the section, I'll show you how I create these images, which, they're on brand and they really kind of tie together nicely with the page and the sections. And again, more imagery we use around the site to really drive home what our brand is and what we're trying to communicate visually. All of it is selling the site look and feel. So let's look at how I put Max in here behind everything. Now it's just a section background, but I can create it in PowerPoint, and you can use the same principle or method to create any kind of subtle background images you want. So we'll head over to PowerPoint, and on a new slide, I'm just going to paste in a picture of Max himself, something like this, okay? So here's Max here, he's nice, but if we just save this as a picture, SharePoint's going to try and put Max in the whole section, but we want him off to the side. So a handy way to do that is if you go to Insert, you come over to Shapes and you add in a rectangle. Now just quickly back to our site, we know that we want Max somewhere over here, so we can kind of get a good idea for the size of the image, or at least the aspect ratio we want for it. So back in here, we're just going to draw a rectangle that represents the section. So it might be something like that. And when we have it in here, what we might do is send it to the back so it sits behind Max, okay? And then we can grab Max, we can go to picture format, and then we can crop them so we get rid of the bits that we don't want. So say we just want it to be here at the bottom of our section. So we've got that, and we just click outside and it crops it. So now what we'll do, we don't want this blue here in our image. So what I'll do is I'll select this, I'll right click, and I'll go to Format Shape. Over on the Format Shape, I'm going to increase the transparency all the way for the fill. Then I'll come down to line and I'll say no line because I don't want the line. So we have that in there like that. So then if you hold Shift with the rectangle selected and then select Max, what you can do is you can then right click and you can say group. So now this is all one image, and that's the image I'm going to save that I can use as my section background. So again, when I've got the group selected, I'll right click and I'll say save as picture. So now I've saved that, I can go over into SharePoint and apply it. So back in SharePoint, this is where I want to add it. So I'll put the page into edit mode. And what I'll do is I'll just select the section. I'll go to its properties, go to design and say add a background. And now I just upload that image of Max. We have it here selected. I'll say add image, and Max comes in like this. Now, because we've got a white background with our yellow buttons, we have the white overlay selected. So Max could have 0 overlay, but that won't really work with our text, right? We won't be able to read it. So just increase that overlay so you can still see Max and you can still read the text. And that's really all you want to do. We can exit out of this. So we see he comes in there like that. I'll republish. And that's how you can get a really nice subtle image in the background, created entirely in PowerPoint, mind you. And it looks really great. Again, it's a subtle thing, but these are the changes that are going to make you stand apart from every other SharePoint site you come in contact with. So moving down the page, let's look at this brand identity, okay? Now, this is the quick links web part, and this is probably the layout that I hate the most about the quick links web part. There's just way better alternatives. So it's a good point, really. It's the variation in web parts that you use really can help, because this page that comes stock with the SharePoint template. It's just using the quick links web part again and again and again. And I think we can do better, especially with the introduction of the new editorial card web part. So what we'll do is we'll edit the page, and I'll just increase the size so I have a bit of room. I'll bring this down out of the way. And what I'll do is I'll select here, I'll come over to the toolbox, I'll say see all web parts, and I'm going to choose editorial card. And I really, really like this web part. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring it in, because we effectively want 4, okay, to replace the 4 in our quick links down below. So I'll bring that right over here. I'll keep my 2 boxes at the top. So I'm going to change the layout settings of this. So I'll go to edit properties, and I'm just going to change it to a white background, and I'm going to align it to the middle. And now I can call this one icons, for example. And our 28 font is great. And then I can put in a description which lets people know what this link leads to. So we'll pop in this in here like this, which looks pretty good. And what I'll also do is this learn more. I want to introduce a little bit more color, and I like icons. So I'm going to come down here to type, and I'm going to say it's icon. And then you just pop in a link to whatever you're linking to, really. For now, I'm just going to pop in a link to this site. So we get the red, that's what it will look like. Now again, because I like emojis, I'm just going to come up here to the title, return up here, get my emoji picker out, and I'll just pick a random hand gesture. I'll bring this down, and I might increase it to something like 42. Looks pretty nice. So something like that. And essentially for this section, that's what I would do just to replace these in here. So we don't have this boring web part, we have this much nicer new web part. So I'm just going to duplicate this web part and duplicate it 2 more times so that we have the links that we want in here. Now try and get the spacing between as much as you can, because everybody likes a nice neat grid. And then at this point, you'll just update, what it's linking to, what the title is, the hand gesture, and the descriptions, of course. I'll leave it like that for now. And then we've no need for this ugly looking thing anymore. So I'll just delete it out of there, and it's gone. And I think this is much nicer. Now coming down to our template section again, it's this web part that I don't like, so I want to change it. So I will take this and I will delete it. And what we're looking for is something that comes down here like this. So this is actually the editorial web part again, but I'm just playing with a grid kind of a structure here. So back in here, I'll come into this section. I'll select the toolbox, see all web parts. I'll choose the editorial card. Comes in like this, and I'm just going to resize it so that I can fit at least 3 in a row. And I'm going to change the layout, because again, we want to just introduce a bit of variation into this web part. So I'm going to go to split in this case, which gives me room for a nice image that I can put on the site. So we'll do the first one so you get an idea for it anyway. So we're going to call this one email. I'll pop in a description. And again, because I just really like that icon rather than a button, I'm going to put in an icon. Again, I'll paste in my dummy link so you see it in a nice red color, something like that. So now images, right? How did I get those images to match the branding of the site? So, well, there's a couple of different places you can get images. You, of course, have the SharePoint stock imagery that you can always use. So if we went in here to change image, stock images, we have all of these images in here, and they can be fine, but I think if we're really trying to drive home branding and look and feel, we can do better. Other places you can get images, example would be unsplash.com. It's a lot of images in there that are free to use however you wish. But there's another resource that uses Unsplash, and then you can add your branding on top of it, which I really like. And it's a website called Duotone or something like that. I'll put a link in the description below, and it should be on screen here now. But basically, if we come to this site, it sources images from Unsplash, but you can add like a color overlay to them. So you can choose your brand colors and pop them in, and it's going to restyle the images. So if we come back to our ever useful color swatches in here in PowerPoint, we'll copy that hex code. I'll come back into here and I'll just paste it in here because I want kind of red images. And then I think I'll have them with the blue as well. And then we can just pop in our navy in here. So we have this kind of color scheme going on in here, and then we can just search Unsplash for anything we want. So we have email in here. So I can type in email in here and hope I get lucky. And then we get all of these images in here, which are really going to tie into the branding of our site because we're using our brand colors. So everyone is a winner. So I can just come in here and I can download the image straight away. And that means when I come back to SharePoint, I can come in here, I can say change image, and then I can just upload that image I downloaded, which is my email here. And I'll say open, add image. And now we get that really nice image in here, which ties in perfectly to our site. So I'd basically just repeat that for the other links that were in this section. So I'll just duplicate this one out, bring it over here, do the same again. And because we had 4, but I can really only fit, 3 of these web parts in a row. I'll get the next one, I'll duplicate it, I'll bring it down here, try and keep my spacing consistent. So I have 2 squares there, I have 2 squares there. And then I can just take this and drag it all the way out. And that's how I can get this nice grid effect, which is exactly what I've done here. Then you just change the headings, create more images that are beautiful, pop them in, and you are good to go. And then if we come down the page here, well, first of all, let's move this up again to our 2 square rule. We come down here. I think this all looks pretty nice in here. There's not too much I'd change about this. What I might do is on this quick links web part, I don't mind the button style all that much. I might just show a description, and then I can tell people what training is about, what the branding checklist is, and things like that. I can just pop in certain descriptions in there and it looks fine. In fact, let me just rob the description from here. So I can pop it in here just to show you the difference. So I'll select here and I'll put in the description, and something like that, that makes sense, obviously, is really nice, right? Because you just want people to know what it is they're clicking on. So we're in a Red Bull site that's all about racing cars, so a drone doesn't really fit here. So this is the hero web part that we all know and love. I'll just change this image to a Formula 1 car. Something like this guy here, open, add image, and that looks really nice in there, I think. So there you have it for tip number 4, which is all about images with just a few strategic image choices, a few resources up your sleeve. You can make all the difference to your site and have it absolutely beautiful. And now tip number 5 is all about clarity and consistency. And these really are the principles that pull everything together and are the quiet heroes of great intranet design. So let's start with clarity. Well, look, every section on your page should be very clear to the user what it's about and what it entails. Every link that you place on the page should leave nobody in any doubt of where it's going to take them. That clarity is super important. So on our page, we'll see here that we still have room to introduce this. So for example, in our guidance section here, well, guidance could maybe use with a bit of a description. If we come over here to our demo site, we can have a piece of text in here. A short piece of text, doesn't have to be, war and peace, but just to let people know generally what this section is about. I don't mind this dummy text in here. I was rushing at the end, but that's what that's intentionally there to do. We can see we have it down here in all of our sections just to tell people again at a high level what this section is about. We have it down here in templates, again in training, and again, like I said, add it into these buttons, okay? They have a space there for a description, so you might as well use it. Ultimately, the goal here is not to let users waste a click to navigate away from your page only to figure out it's not what they thought it was and have to come back. And now consistency, well, this is all about patterns and, reusing the same design standards and visual language throughout your site to be consistent so people recognize the site and they get used to the content that's on your site. Using the same heading styles, consistency in web parts, the right choice in web parts, where you position things on the page. These are all things to think about and keep front and center that you can repeat again and again. It's going to make the process of building out pages way simpler. If we saw something on this page that we wanted for another page, we could always copy this page and start from that as a baseline to build on and make that consistency much easier to implement. So to summarize this tip, I'd say clarity helps users find what they need, and consistency is what builds confidence in terms of navigating and locating information within your sites. And together they make your site feel not just, well designed, but actually intentional and thought through, which is just super important. So there you have it. That's my 5 tips with about 1 million sub tips under each of how you can transform your pages very quickly from kind of bland and mundane into something that's visually rich, exciting, and has a great user experience built in. As a quick recap, what we covered was tip number 1 is all about color. Choose your brand colors up front. Create the assets you need with your swatches using PowerPoint and you're good to go. Tip number 2 is page structure. Design for the scroll. Don't be afraid of it. Make sure your sections are very clear and laid out with enough space so that people can, absorb section by section. You can always introduce the on-page navigation if you're worried about the scrolling. Tip number 3 is all about fonts and typography. Use them as tools, okay? Don't rely on just the default styling SharePoint gives you. Make them big, make them bold, add in the accents, use emojis, use custom fonts. It all helps sell the look and feel of your site. Tip number 4 was all about imagery. I've shared a couple of tools that you can use to create those custom images, such as the duotone tool. Use PowerPoint. You don't need Figma. You don't need any fancy design packages. PowerPoint, which we will all have access to, can do all of the same things. And as I've shown you, you can create great assets for your pages. And then tip number 5, most importantly in terms of UX, is make things clear, make them consistent. Don't make your users think. Lay it out for them, make it easy for them to get what they want quickly and efficient. So if you wrap your head around these kind of principles and tips and approaches, you are built for success and you can't fail. You're going to have beautiful SharePoint sites all the way along. So hopefully you found that useful. You didn't think it was too much of a preach. It's just honestly the types of things that go through my head when I'm designing and building out my SharePoint sites. If you have anything to add, please leave it in the comments below, or if you've anything that you can, share with me that you could improve in what I've seen, I'd also love to hear it. I'm also learning myself every single day. If you're so inclined, like and subscribe, because that's always great, helps me grow the channel. If you're interested in my courses and you want to see how I build out fully functional SharePoint sites, head over to academy365.io. If you don't want to do any of that, don't worry about it either. That's totally fine. So with all that being said, I will see you in the next one.